Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco, here again with another episode of Deep Listens. Today, we're going to be talking about Bionic Commando. No, not the good one. The 2009 Bionic Commando, starring Nathan Rad Spencer and his dreadlocks. And I am joined, as always, on this trip by Pete, the Arm Busby.
What's going on, everybody? I'm both excited and mortified, I think would be the best way to describe it, to talk about this particular game. It's cool in some ways, interesting in others, and absolutely terrible in still others. But in honor of it, I have what may be my favorite fun fact that I've ever shared on this podcast. This is big.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is it about fiddler crabs? Because I feel like that'd be really appropriate.
No, that would be super appropriate now that you say it. But no, it's not. It's about popes and smoking.
Ooh.
So this is from an Atlantic article called The Ashtray of History. And it's all about sort of the history of smoking and smoking. Well, I'll just read the facts so I don't bury the lead here. So in 1624, Pope Urban VIII issued a worldwide smoking ban. Now, I couldn't tell if this was like smoking, or another place said snuff. But regardless, he issued a smoking ban and threatened excommunication for those who smoke or take snuff in holy places on the logic that it promotes sneezing, which too closely resembles sexual ecstasy. So the Pope banned smoking because too many people were sneezing and he thought they were getting off.
These people sound too happy.
Yes, like this is way too close to feeling good. Can't be having this. No more tobacco for anybody.
And I like that the high from smoking was not the thing he wanted to stop.
Nope.
It was the sneezing. Great. What a bank shot.
They kept that ban in place until Pope Benedict repealed it, and then the Vatican opened its own tobacco factory. So they sort of went the whole other way with that one.
Is it like blessed tobacco?
I guess. I don't know if they still operate it, but that was in 1779. They opened their own tobacco factory. Okay,
good. So this was the old Pope Benedict, because there's been several Pope Benedicts.
Yes, no, this was Benedict the 13th.
Okay.
Much earlier.
Okay. I thought you meant in the, wasn't the last Pope a Benedict?
Yes, he was. No, not that one.
That would be way more appropriate if
before him, probably.
He just started an agribusiness. Well, that's great.
He doesn't seem like he'd be on board with smoking. He seems like he'd be against anything that makes anybody feel good ever.
I'm surprised that once they got into the tobacco business, they didn't issue a decree that everyone must blow trees.
Sure, that's a good point. Make it part of the product. I would be surprised.
So we've got the body of Christ, the blood of Christ, and the breath?
The breath? Yeah, the breath of Christ?
Yeah, boom. Sure. Take a hit.
Done. Mission accomplished.
All right, so we are joined also by M. the Dreads Palladino.
Hey, guys. That just made me think of a meme, by the way. What if the Pope blasted cigs? I have to shout that out for my brother, who probably doesn't listen to this show.
He'll start.
Yeah.
Well, that's really a you problem.
I'll tell him there's something special for him in this one.
Excellent. And we are also joined because this game was afflicted on us on the request of Chris ZombiePie Redacted, so we are joined by him. Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Wayne Brady. I'm proud to be here for Let's Make a Deal. I want to go with door number 2, hoping for a car or maybe a trip to Hawaii.
Oh, no, it's
no
Bionic
whammies,
Commando.
No whammies.
Show me potato salad.
It's Bionic Commando 2009. Sorry.
It's a toaster oven.
Bob Barker, I want to bid $1. And I want to just say I respect your work. I've spayed and neutered my dog, my cat, and my fish. But $1 for the jacuzzi.
Sorry, you're over. This was
damn it.
a fun home.
Yeah, I feel good about suitcase number 12. I think it's got the $1 million, even though my odds of making more than 5 are 1 out of 26. I got a good feeling about suitcase number 12.
The bank has an offer. Let's go in for the Pete, do you have the bank's offer? He'd like to
I'm
buy
the
him
bank.
out.
Let me be all shadowy out here. I will give him a firm handshake and 2 quick golf claps.
So you have an offer, ZP. A handshake, 2 quick golf claps.
Could I get some bubble gum?
I'm sorry, we don't negotiate.
Bubble gum or high chews?
No,
I'll go with the.
With your credit rating, we can't negotiate with you.
Yeah, let's go with the bank offer.
Okay. Excellent. Great choice. And now this bit's stopping because we have emails.
Deep in there. That was a long one.
Well, when someone references Deal or No Deal, I have to oblige.
Fair enough.
As this podcast bylaws state. So we have emails this week.
Woo.
Remember, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. We've got a couple emails today. These come in from, this one comes in from Grandin, who's been on the show before, and he continues to send us emails. I like it. He says, "Hey guys, just wanted to send a quick congratulations to Pete on recently leading Clemson to a national championship over Alabama. You may have hoodwinked the rest of the nation with your Trevor Lawrence disguise, but not me. Not sure how you managed to balance MMA and a job with being a Division I quarterback, but colored me impressed. Also, the flow game is strong. Have a great podcast, guys." And we got another email 3 minutes before that email from what appears to be some sort of alt account or perhaps a brother of Grandin. It's unclear. Who says, "Gino, please congratulate Pete on his recent national title and remind him he is not slick. Thank you. Cordially, XXX hashtag swole guild 420 69 69 69 XXX sent from my iPhone."
Very nice.
I just feel like I should call out that the X's are capital X, lowercase x, capital X on both sides, and all the words other than that are lowercase.
Nice.
That is elite.
Good.
So, Pete, how do you, or if that's even your real name, how do you respond to these charges?
I will continue to deny them. I will say Trevor Lawrence is a handsome, handsome man with a very strong chin, and I've had good flow in the past, but my lettuce has never been as strong as Trevor Lawrence's is. I will freely admit. But it's nice to be paired with such a handsome individual. And if any of our listeners were curious what I looked like, that's decently close, actually.
Yeah, it's startlingly close.
Yeah,
Except
it is.
if you grew your hair out a little more, and he looks like he might be able to grow a mustache, you definitively cannot.
Oh, no, absolutely not. He does look like the sort of He-Man that could, though.
Yes. I zoomed in. I see something on his chin. It might be his head hair wrapping around to his chin. Enhance. Enhance.
He's also, probably 19. So,
Yeah.
I mean, let's give him some time. But one day.
He's already well on his way. He won a championship. Go to hell,
okay.
Alabama. So, way to go. So those are our emails. Nothing game related, which I think is appropriate for the show.
Why would they?
I knew I was coming on the podcast, so I didn't want you to. I didn't want to give you your monthly allowance of ZP all in one little potent pill.
That's fair, and I'm glad because I assume it would have involved the continuing explanation of the Namco timeline. And
There's still more timeline.
There's
still more timeline. We have to go to the end of the timeline.
I'm sorry I said
go
it.
To the far-flung future.
Pete and M, I'm sorry I said that out loud. I'm sorry.
You brought this on yourself.
Oh, well, I guess we should probably start talking about Bionic Commando.
If we must.
Quick.
ZP, since you were the person who wanted us to play this game, what's Bionic Commando 2009?
Bionic Commando is probably one of the most 2010, 2000-aught games that we've played. It's one of the first games we've played for the podcast, but it takes place after about 10 years after the original Bionic Commando, both for the NES and the rearmed edition of Bionic Commando, which was available on digital platforms the previous generation, that being the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Microsoft Windows. It stars Nathan Rad Spencer, who is a major within the government of not evil Nazi, not Nazi government. And he is a bionic human being with his robotic arm taking over his left arm, and he has a normal body everywhere else. And
Well-
at some point following the defeat of the evil Nazis, what is that? What?
I would say he has a human body everywhere else. I
Yeah, I
wouldn't
wouldn't say
it's
those
normal.
dreads are normal.
Okay. Fair
Or
enough.
his goatee.
He also has neat boots. That's important.
It's true.
Yeah, the metal boots allow you to absorb the fall of anything that you come from. So that's an important thing.
Yeah, that checks out scientifically.
Yeah, that checks out scientifically. So there's a good government, but the government that's good is in quotations with an asterisk to the side because this is the 2009. So, when this game was made, the Bush administration was still in power. And so the government of the world, I guess, has banned bionic people, stolen all of their limbs, and is throwing them into prison for whatever reason because it's never really detailed.
Perhaps you've heard of the X-Men, or maybe the Civil War storyline in Marvel. We created these heroes. They need to protect us. But wait, they're not regulated. They're too powerful. They answer to no one. So we must take their powers away.
So after this, a bionic terrorist group that I forget what the terrorist group is called.
That's really appropriate that you forgot it.
BioRain.
Yep.
BioRain, correct. BioRain
Yes.
does a terrorist attack in which they implode a nuclear weapon in Ascension City, which also unleashes an earthquake that just completely destroys the city and wipes out the entire populace. And because the government knows that, I guess, Nathan Rad Spencer is one of the few people who can navigate through the environment without dying of radiation poisoning.
Well, that's not true. I guess we'll discuss that.
He's allowed to join the Tactical Arms and Security Committee, known as TASK, which is led by Joseph Gibson, a.k.a. Super Joe.
Who I will
And
refer
so he
to
goes
from
into
here
the
on out
city
as
looking
Super Joseph.
Yes. He goes into the city under the orders of Super Joe, looking for the terrorist group that's responsible for destroying Ascension City, and experiences some flashbacks about what caused people to turn on the evil or the bionic people. And then there's the times in which he interacts with his fellow bionics. And then there are Nazis, and then there's an end where you headbutt the evil villain who's dramatically revealed to be Super Joe.
Wait.
Until he dies.
Whoa.
You asked for a summary. I thought that's what this was all about. I don't listen to the podcast.
We'll get there. We'll get to the headbutt in due time.
I love this game. I don't care what everyone else on this podcast says. This is just I picked this game because it is, to me, the definition of a podcast game. Because, one, no one ever talks about it. Two, people put in some real legitimate effort to make this game. And three, it's a disaster.
Yeah. Three, it's bad.
Goddamn mess.
It's a disaster. This game is it almost has kind of like a B movie quality where you can tell that people really tried to make this game really good.
There were talented people involved.
So spectacularly that it's kind of amazing. And it's kind of amazing that this game was made in the first place. It's kind of amazing that the story was greenlit. It was kind of amazing that this game shipped in the state that it did. And it's kind of an emblem of a generation of video games that no longer exists.
Yeah, so I've in the past said that Trine, which was a game that we played, was the most 2009 game. I was wrong. Bionic Commando is.
It's just like so self-consciously gritty.
Yes, this game could only exist because Gears of War existed before it.
Yeah, I was going to say Prince of Persia 2 as well.
Yes.
Or Deus Ex Human Revolution. That Deus Ex guy's voice. Ooh, boy.
Have you, at any point, Pete or M, seen the original Bionic Commando design for Nathan Rad Spencer?
Yes, I went back and looked.
And it is so much better.
Yeah. So the original Rad Spencer looks like an Arnold Schwarzenegger knockoff with red hair and sunglasses. You know, because he's cool.
You actually play as him in the tutorial for this game.
And it's
which
great.
Is odd. I don't know why they, use that model instead of the guy you play as the whole
Because
rest of
that
the
takes
game?
place before the events of 2009, before he's thrown in prison.
Yes.
And he's
Yeah, it's a
learning how to use his
flashback, I
arm.
guess.
Yeah, it's the flashback when he first got his arm. Also, you can get that character model if you had a save file of Bionic Commando Rearmed.
Why would
you really?
Yes, if you had a save file which had Bionic Commando Rearmed, this version of the game is able to detect that using kind of like that Mass Effect 2 technology, and will unlock that as a available costume.
Man,
That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Although it really is totally out of place, and it doesn't fit the tone of the game at all to be running around with this neon red buzz cut guy with a green jumper.
Oh yeah, unlike this completely tonally consistent dreadlock, goatee, tank top man.
Hey man, they went for a
With
tone
cargo
and
pants.
they were dedicated.
So, can you just confirm to me, he's got two kind of belt loops kind of going off to the side. Are those suspenders that he's not wearing because he's too edgy to wear suspenders, or are those supposed to be holding something? It's unclear to me.
I suspect that they are suspenders. I know what you're talking about, and
Okay.
yes, I think they are suspenders.
Awesome. What a design. This design could only have existed in 2009. The white guy dreads that this guy has and his goatee, it's just so beautifully ugly. You don't
And
come up with that
overall,
design on purpose.
It's so beautifully ugly is kind of the best way to describe this game, because the environments are garbage. It's the same devastated, blown-out city landscape with a few times in which you see the foliage and open-world sequences. Those are actually beautiful, but you spend so much time in, like, nondescript industrial park, nondescript industrial apartment zone, nondescript industrial-looking super mall. You spend so much time looking at the same thing. It's beautiful, but also ugly.
Yeah, and I feel like we should mention the core mechanic of this game is swinging with the bionic arm. The arm itself is a grappling hook, essentially, and you can grapple onto objects, and then you can kind of pull yourself to them and swing kind of Spider-Man style using the arm. And then the arm also allows you to do things in combat, like grapple onto an enemy and then zip line into them and kick them in the chest, which is cool every time you do it. You can kind of do a big ground pound when you're falling. You can zip line onto things, like whip them into the air using your arm and then throw them at things. So it's all basically centered around the arm, much like the original Bionic Commando was. However, I feel like this game, it's a little finicky in spots with the arm.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, so you can only grapple onto certain objects. It's most of the world. Like in the early game, it's only a few select spots, but after like a level or two, it's pretty much everything. And once you grapple onto things, you can kind of reel in and then jump, and Spencer will try to get on top of whatever you're, grappled onto. So if it's a lamp post, he'll kind of pull himself up on top of it, which is convenient. Like, that seems to work most of the time. And his ability to jump off of a grapple is incredible. Sometimes he will just, like, I've grappled onto the bottom of things and had him kind of do a C-shaped jump and ending up on top of whatever it was. It looks wonky every time it happens, but it's very convenient as a game player. But the game can be very finicky with just grabbing onto surfaces. You'd think his arm could reach a little bit farther, it feels like, a lot of the time. What did you guys think of the actual grappling mechanics?
Go ahead.
I think it's simultaneously the best and most disappointing part of the game, maybe. Like, the best part of the game is swinging around. Like, it wants to be Spider-Man, just like you said. Like, very self-consciously. But the game's so... The environments are so sort of tight and sort of linear, and the Z targeting, so to speak, is very finicky. So, like, when you hit it, it's nice, but you don't hit it enough, I guess.
Yeah. For me, the biggest thing, like, I could barely play the game because when you would, like, be zipping around, there was a motion blur that would affect you. There's no way to turn it off. So when you, like, use your arm to, like, grapple or swing, it basically like made me nauseous whenever I was trying to like maneuver through the environment. So like they really like tooled it to make that motion blur. Like there was a lot of effect on a lot of this game.
Yeah, you need to experience how fast he's going.
Yeah, right? Like, there are times when your screen will get all muddy, and there was a lot of, like, visual effects that were just kind of overworked, I think. It was a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, and I found for me, like, when I was swinging and jumping, and there were some sections where you're swinging on mines that are just kind of floating in the air, so there's no... You just are swinging over a pit, almost like in a platformer, you know? It felt almost like a Mario game, but, you know, you're underneath the objects instead of on top of it. And if you miss a jump, you just fall to your death. So in those segments, because you kind of have to maintain momentum, and your vertical momentum and your horizontal momentum kind of have different apexes. You know, when you're at the end of your swing, you'll get a little bit higher, but you won't go as far. If you release kind of when you're moving forward, think like jumping off of a swing set. That will throw you pretty far forward, but not very high. And with the way they placed some of the mines and things that you had to swing across, I would often just end up in a spot where I felt like I made a good jump, but it was not going to get me where I needed to go. And you just kind of can hold on to the grapple button, and he will just throw a grapple onto anything that's near you, as long as it's kind of in your general line of sight. And that was mostly how I navigated the sections, just being very sloppy, hoping that he grabbed onto anything, oh god, anything. And then just kind of, you know, hoping.
Yeah.
So, as someone who really loved the NES and arcade version of this game, I would say that it's kind of like what Pete said. It's both the best part of the game and most infuriating part of the game. The one thing that I would say about especially, you know, Bionic Commando Rearmed is in order to incentivize you to use the bionic arm, there's no jumping button. You can't jump in that game. You're forced and throttled by design to use the bionic arm exclusively. And it actually leads to the game feeling like it is your thing to use. You feel like you really have to hone and become an expert in how to use it. But in Bionic Commando 2009, you can still walk around. You can still jump. And there's almost too much that you can do, and none of the environments really allow you to use all of your abilities all at once. I never felt like I ever became an expert on the bionic arm. Like if something cool happened, it just happened because I was like flailing away on the buttons, hoping to not fall into a pit of radiation or a giant puddle.
And we should talk about good segue, radiation. So in this game, there are just wide open areas that feel like they should be wide open expanses that you kind of navigate however you want. But there are these large blue clouds of radiation that's been left behind from the nuclear incident. And if, as a super soldier, as a bionic super soldier, you are extra sensitive to radiation. Everyone knows this. So if you spend more than a few seconds in one of those blue clouds, you just die. And there are plenty of times I felt where a path that the game is funneling you towards is a little too close to the blue clouds. So you would just be navigating the ordinary route that the game wants you to go on, and then you'd suddenly just start taking damage or die if you just go even slightly off of the line that they expect you to go. They kill you a couple... There's the radiation, and then there's water, because you have a metal arm and metal boots, so you can't swim either. So if you land in water, you can't jump, and you can only grapple away, and if you can't grab anything, you drown. Which sucks. Sucks so much.
It at least makes sense, though. Like, I appreciate that the game at least justifies its drowning mechanic in that way.
Yes, the drowning makes sense. It's the radiation that adheres to certain buildings but not others. Is sometimes
there are even weird patches on the building where it's like the top of the roof is covered in radiation and so is the side, but the center mass is something where you can jump off and explore the inside guts of the building.
Yeah, or like, hey, there's a cloud above you and a cloud below you, but there's kind of this median area in the middle that you can walk in just fine. It's very clearly just a gameplay constraint to keep you from wandering too far outside of the level.
No, I think one, I think you're wrong about that, and two, I think it is important to admit that we played a game that's basically half done, and I think I heard an interview by someone at Grin where they put in the radiation because they just couldn't finish the game. And so they had to create these narrow corridors because they were on a time schedule, because they blew their budget on the first few levels, and they blew their budget on Bionic Commando Rearmed, to where they had to get this game out, and they didn't have a lot of time, and that's how they got it done. It's important, and I think maybe we need to kind of talk about it. This game had a really troubled development cycle. It was hugely problematic. I mean, Capcom believed that this game, Lost Planet, and what was the other one? Dark Void would be their real kind of foray as a AAA developer, because during that 360 PS3 era, they had struck gold with Street Fighter IV, resurrecting their position within the fighting game community and within the industry. I mean, they had the #1 fighting game across all platforms. And so they used and pooled their money together to set up these contracts and hire other development studios, both internally and externally, with a series of projects. Some of them were good, such as Dead Rising, which I like Dead Rising. And then you have Bionic Commando 2009 and Dark Void, which were financial fiascos. And, this game is half done. There might have been a really good game. And that's kind of an emblem of this era of B game that is far too often the case.
Yeah, so my central problem, I understand the radiation as a conceit, like a way to get the game out the door. I kind of understood it as a way that's just like funneling you. It's just inelegant. It even behaves inelegantly when you go into the clouds. The way that it kills you and the way that it behaves, it feels like they are just literally toggling your HP slider lower until you die. And if this was a consideration, even if it was something that they added late, the way that it's implemented feels just rushed. Yeah, Em, do you agree?
Oh yeah, I'm with you on all that. It feels very much like, they wanted to get something out there quick, and you can tell when, like, the rules don't sort of line up. Like, some things are radiated and others aren't. It was just sort of slapped on top. They didn't, like, coordinate their language correctly.
Yeah, and I mean, even the look of the radiation is a blue particle cloud. It's something that you could add, in 5-10. Like, that's actually a thing that you can add in a few minutes to a level. I don't know if they were using Unreal for this, but just creating a cloud of colored particles.
They created their own engine in-house for this game.
Yeah.
They made their own game engine for this game.
Oh, no.
Which probably explains a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, the sheer amount of effort, like, to put into this. Like, you were like, let's do this as much as opposed to as well as possible.
Yeah, well, man, I don't know what they were getting out of their engine that they needed to make their own instead of modifying
They're still using
an existing one. I know, but, well, the Grin isn't.
No, Grin went on to form the Payday and Payday 2 development team, Overkill or 505.
Oh, okay.
So basically they still technically exist, and they're still making games using this engine, but they've ironed out the kinks.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, this team, even though the studio went bankrupt and folded, they basically stayed together, although they kicked out all of the upper management people, and then came back together and coalesced to make Payday and Payday 2. I think that's Overkill Software. I forget what else. I think they founded one other studio, and I forget what it was called, but Yeah, no, yeah. A lot of these developers, they enjoyed working together. It's just, was unfortunate.
Yeah.
But
what did you think of the shooting? So there's the
It's
arm, but it's
horrible.
also a
Oh my
shooter,
God.
and it's a bad shooter.
It's so bad.
which is crazy because Grin has made really good shooters before. Oh, Fat Shark was the developer that I was thinking of, and they made Fat Shark made they made the Vermintide games, Warhammer Vermintide and Vermintide 2. So these developers are very skilled, and they have made far better games than Bionic Commando 2. But and they also know how to make shooting games because Payday and Vermintide are third-person action games with shooting elements. And the shooting here is absolutely horrible, and it kind of falls into that trap of like Mirror's Edge where they shouldn't have even included it in the first place.
Yeah,
because it defeats the purpose of using the bionic arm, and oftentimes the scenarios that the game creates force you to use these assy kind of crappy guns and missile launchers, and the fact that you can't just get away with using the bionic arm with these scenarios is a problem.
Yeah, the starting pistol, they managed to add to all of the weapons a just level of imprecision that feels bad every time you use it. Like, you can't lock on, and this is a game where you are swinging and jumping and zip lining from place to place, and for some reason there's no way to lock on to a group of enemies or something while you're swinging, except with certain weapon types, and even then it's a little finicky. And you've got like this pistol, you've got a sniper rifle, you get a shotgun, a grenade launcher, and a rocket launcher. I think those are all the gun types. I found the sniper rifle almost unusable because they add in weapon sway. So
good.
The sniper rifle is just swimmy. It's just constantly moving, just a little bit in all directions. So that makes it's super great. It's super great for shooting things at distance. And it's not like in other games where, you can take a breath and then you'll be steady for a second. No, you just have to shoot and hope that it hits. The shotgun I found useful because it's a shotgun. And then they start throwing enemies at you towards the later end of the game that are immune to your bionic arm.
Exactly. and yeah, I mean, the part of the game where this really starts to become just a pain in the ass to play is when they start introducing those fucking Hadouken mech suits that can oh my God, that entire scene. And again, the big problem here is that they're not only immune to using the bionic arm, but they will, in fact, do a counter move that almost immediately kills you if you try to use your bionic arm on them.
Yeah, and they grab your arm and reel you in and then punch you.
Damn.
And so you're forced to use these really not so fun weapons that they might have deliberately designed poorly to incentivize you to use the bionic arm, and now you're in a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, those mechs, they have a weak point in their back, but they always face you. You have to stun them in order to get around behind them, or just trick them. And it's not. I never felt like I was doing it on purpose if they faced away from me. Or you can blast them in the face with explosive weapons. So the grenade launcher, rocket launcher, and just regular grenades will damage them regardless of where you're attacking them from. So those enemies in particular, they feel bad to fight against. They always know where you are after they first see you, so it's not like you can just escape and surprise them. It feels like all the enemies, once you show yourself to them, they just immediately home in on where you are, which feels annoying also, since you're supposed to be super mobile.
It is some 2008, 2009 artificial intelligence design. Yeah. They will make a beeline to you, and oftentimes what would happen is they get stuck in parts of the environment and just are running in place. I had a thing where one of the mech suits got stuck in this pile of rubble, and it was just walking in place, and I was able to kill it with almost complete ease. The one thing I would say, especially in the later levels, is there's just not enough junk to throw around. Sometimes there's just one car right next to you, and if you fuck up and you throw it into the ocean, then you have absolutely nothing to use or throw at the enemies.
Yeah, and throwing stuff at the enemies is the only other way you can damage those flying mechs from the front.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's mechanically, though, I mean, it is something to where I can't help but look at it and say, man, if they had an extra year to make this game, if they had like a reasonable budget and like a not so like messed up production cycle, there's something to this game that is demonstrably fun. I mean, when you hit a nice stride when you're swinging in the environments, my favorite level is when you're in the underground caverns, and the game just basically allows you to hook onto any rock or stalactite or stalagmite, or the time when you're in the park and there's all these luscious trees and everything's kind of placed in a way where there's not a lot of garbage. What just amazes me is it's a solid hour before you really feel like there's an environment where you can test out all of the little things to the robot arm. And the game also, I can't believe it, it doesn't give you all of the cool abilities right from the start.
That's what I was going to say. I can't. This game starts you separate from the arm. It starts you in just as a corridor shooter. It doesn't teach you how to use the arm or multiple abilities of the arm until like a half hour in. Which how?
It's called Bionic Commando.
How do you start with it just being a shooter? On purpose.
And it's not even a good shooter.
No, they chose that, man. And like the segments you mentioned where you're just free swinging and exploring, I like those parts of the game, but it's a shame because that's just few and far between. There's only like 3 segments I feel like in the entire game that are largely swing puzzles.
That really highlights how I feel like this game is halfway done because 1, there's only like 2 levels like that, and 2, this is a very top-heavy game where those first 2 levels feel like real levels, and then you get to like the 3rd and 4th level, and they're like 15 minutes long, not even that. I mean, I guess we can go around. How long did it take y'all to finish this game? Maybe like 4 hours?
Yeah, I was going to say around there, maybe a little bit more.
So,
I think it took me 3.
Em, how long did it take you to beat this game? About 3 or 4 hours?
I didn't even finish this game because it made me so sick swinging around.
Oh, yeah, the motion blur.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning, this game was full priced $60 when it launched.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so one thing, the reason I was able to beat it a little bit faster was that in large sections of the game where they're just throwing waves of enemies at you, you're so mobile, you can just go around them. And a lot of the levels I encountered, I would just zipline past all of the enemies, all the regular trash. I would get to the door that's going to be locked because they will always lock one door until you kill all the enemies. But they don't actually want you to kill all the enemies. You just have to kill the one robot enemy. And if you kill that, then the door drops. So I just would zipline past all the regular bullshit, kill the one robot to unlock the door, and then move past. So there were some levels that seemed like they were supposed to be like 20 minutes, and I finished them in 2. So this game at least is broken in ways that probably would make it fun to speedrun.
Oh yeah, the speedrun, I found a speedrun. It was, I think, an hour. So I'm surprised it wasn't even shorter.
Yeah. I bet there's a way to make it even shorter.
So we've been talking around the story.
Oh, man. This is the good stuff.
I think it's time to talk about the story. So Nathaniel Radisson Spencer.
It's just Nathan Rad Spencer, thank you very much.
Nathaniel
Nathan Rad Spencer. Respect his sacrifice to our government.
They didn't strip him of his rank when they imprisoned him?
No. Or
he said he pulls rank on people in the game.
Yeah,
that's true. She does. You're right.
It's amazing when he does it. It's just like, what goatee man?
It's like, buddy, you got a robot on him. Just crush his head.
Yeah. So you get dropped into this city separate from your arm because it would be too dangerous to drop you into the city with your arm attached.
You're not. You're forgetting the fact that the arm gets its own pod. It gets its own. They shoot him through a missile that is able to land through a building, a steel skyscraper, him unscathed, and they put his robot arm in another missile that also ends up in the same building but slightly above.
Yep.
They
They're
came
not
from
going
the
to airdrop him.
place.
They're not going to. Yeah, it's man. You can tell that Europeans were trying to make like a 2000s era action blockbuster, and they tried. They tried real hard.
It's like someone watched action movies, but in the wrong language the whole time. Like if I was just watching a bunch of French action movies and just trying to... Do those exist? They probably exist.
French action movies? Sure.
Sure.
Korean action movies. And I was just like, this is probably what they're saying here. It seems like it. Man. So you get dropped in. Super Joseph is just constantly... Is he voiced by David
Stephen
Blum.
Stephen Blum.
Yeah.
So they...
Who is a good voice actor.
He's a great voice actor.
He's a big name.
He's going hard here.
Yeah.
But when you look...
He goes full grit.
When you look at Super Joseph, though, and then you hear Spike Spiegel's voice coming out of him,
Mm-hmm.
Super Joe looks like he's like a 60-year-old... He's a 60-year-old old white guy with a mustache. He looks like he should sound like Ron Swanson or something.
Yeah. So,
But instead he sounds like Spike Spiegel, and it throws me off every time.
It's also worth mentioning that Super Joe is the protagonist. He's a beloved character from... This is going to be something that we talk about later. He's a beloved character within the golden age of Capcom. He's the protagonist of the original arcade version of Bionic Commando. He's the second player in Bionic Commando NES, but he's this beloved character, Super Joe. And
Is he the main character from
Gino.
Commando?
Huh?
Is he the main character from Commando?
I believe no. He's the main character in Mercenaries or Mercs.
Okay. So Super Joe is a character. I mean, as much as there were characters.
Like, I cannot emphasize enough, Super Joe is a beloved character within people who like Capcom. That golden era of Capcom.
And they have managed to take both of these characters, Rad Spencer and Super Joe, and give them the most white bread ass names they could possibly have to make them gritty and real. Pete, which do you like more, Nathan Rad Spencer, Jane Magdalene, or Joseph Super Joe Gibson?
I mean, Super Joe's probably the best one. Because, like, I could see you just calling somebody Super Joe. Like, if I ever met somebody and they're like, no, just call me Rad, I'd be like, don't worry about it. I'm never going to talk to you again. We don't have to worry about that one.
You're also forgetting the evil, not Nazi guy, Gottfried Groder.
Oh, yes, Gottfried Groder. Who can forget? Yeah, so when you get...
The immortal Gottfried Groder.
When you get dropped in and BioRain, it just becomes immediately clear that this terrorist organization makes no sense. Like, they've blown up this city, and they've got like robots, but it's unclear what they want, and they seem to be constantly perplexed by you and your ability to beat them. Like, they don't figure out who you are for like 50% of the game.
No, like, how many like robot armed commandos could there be?
They have cameras, right?
Is there a surplus?
Yeah.
I keep killing people, and they're on radios talking to other people. Someone's got to have a camera or something.
It's also worth mentioning that BioRain, when we're first introduced to them, we're introduced to the idea that everyone, following the events of Bionic Commando, which everyone remembers the events of Bionic Commando.
But if you didn't, what happens?
But if you didn't, there was the Great Bionic Purge, and anyone who had bionic body parts were imprisoned, and they had their bionic parts ripped away from them. And so BioForge are a collection, BioRange are a collection of bionic people who are trying to fight for their freedoms and their abilities to be bionic people without disturbance from the government.
It's worth mentioning that the bionics here are not like, normal things to help people get along with their lives. They're not just regular prosthetics. Nathan Spencer's arm has a large cable that comes out of his neck, and it's a grappling arm. What's her name? Mag. She's got bionic legs, and they give her super speed. But, man, anytime the BioRain people... It only happens twice, because there's only maybe 6 cutscenes in this whole damn game where anyone talks. But the times when the BioRain people try to explain their motivations, it's just the worst. What did you think of the conversations between Mag and Rad, Pete?
Let me go. I have lots of things to say. Let me go,
As a scholar.
Let
me take a step back first. So the society institutes this sort of ban against cyborgs, basically, right?
Yeah.
So I get that part, but what I don't like. So this very quickly would have become a consumer technology. Like, I don't see how they're sort of suggesting that only the government has access to this stuff and they only use it to make super soldiers. Like, this would be on the market and it would create serious problems because of that, in which case maybe bans would arise from it. But that's neither here nor there. Returning to the mag question, it's awful. It's so terrible. And it only gets worse when you read the actual, like, text hacking mini games.
Yes.
And there's like this very sort of wink wink moment where like they're talking to Mag and they're like, so we heard some rumors about you and Rad. And she's like, what? Is like that you were little more than just platoon mates, if you catch my drift. Like, it's just all so juvenile, I guess. Like,
yeah, and there's segments like Mag talks about how Nathan, they took my legs. I was in a wheelchair, Nathan. I need to nuke this city so I can have legs. Prosthetic legs, they don't do it anymore, Nathan. I've had the good shit.
That's super speed.
I need the super speed, Nathan, to feel anything at all. And if hundreds of thousands of people need to die so I can run real fast, we're going to do that shit.
Worth it.
Oh, the segments, she tries to explain, like, our freedom counts for more than that. But it's not just, like, their freedom. You know, I mean, Nathan seems like he was going to be executed before for no reason because the government's evil. Like, it'd be one thing if this game sets up the government as being somehow better than the fake German Nazi guy.
No, everyone sucks.
But they suck. At no point did I trust the government. At no point did I trust any of these people. They had you, like, getting executed for no reason. The people who are trying to stop, to the BioRain terrorists, they're doing it for no good reason. Everyone's just terrible. I root for no one. I want them all to die, and thankfully the game obliges.
There's only, it's worth mentioning, there are only like 4 characters in this quote-unquote story.
Oh yeah, we've said all of them almost.
I think the only one we didn't talk about is the weird, like, over the intercom general that you talk to like 2 times who's giving Super Joe his orders, and then Sniper Guy, who he has 2 scenes.
Does he count? Yeah, like, is he even a character? Like, he's basically
I don't know. He's in the credits as Thomas Clark, and it's pretty clear that they had some plan of making a sequel to this game that never happened.
Yeah, Thomas Silver Clark.
Silver is his middle name?
I don't know.
Oh, that's so good. This is the best game ever made.
Of course he has a nickname.
Oh, it's so good.
So I think it's worth the For the Troops general guy. What'd you think of him? Because when you talk to him, he's just like, I won't have you. He's besmirching the name of Super Joseph. Questioning his service.
It's so very clear that this game was made in a post 9/11, post George Bush era of, like, we got to write a critique against all these problems that we had in the past, and it just tries so hard to be deep and pensive, and yet it fails so bad. It fails miserably to be deep and pensive and meditative about, like, oh, are they terrorists the good guys or the bad guys? But they're run by Nazis behind the back, so I guess they are bad.
But not behind the back. Like, one of the first
they're taking money from Nazis, and it's like, I feel like in a lot of I feel like in a lot of ways,
Spencer, I'm here to kill you again.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways this game is stuck between 2 generations, trying to be a modern, like, reboot of a franchise with the tone of Gears of War, and then also beholden to the golden years of Capcom. Like, there's nothing more awkward than hearing Magdalene talk about, like, having her legs ripped away from her, and then you swing around and you see the fucking Capcom droid poster, and there are all these, like, there's, like, these collectibles, this iconography of, like, these classic 8-bit, 16-bit characters that you can pick up.
Yeah.
Anytime, like, the solution to, like, if you want to make this military critique, where it's sort of like, you know, what happens when people monopolize the state-sponsored use of violence, right? And sort of when this is deployed in a way such that you can do these extrajudicial movements. And the solution isn't like, oh, we need to reevaluate military use as like the solution for the problems. No, it's just, no, we need to put the guns in the right people's hands. And you know whose right hands it is? It's somebody with a droid for an arm. Like, anytime you want to make a critique of violence and your solution is no more violence, but better violence, it's not going to work out great.
Yeah, and just the segments where military guy who isn't Super Joe, because Super Joe is super ominous from the first moment he starts speaking, and I did not trust him at any point, because he'd just constantly be like, you need to go here. Why? I'm not telling you shit. Spencer. That's a need-to-know basis. You just go.
I do appreciate the amount of swearing in this game, because there's nothing more not cool than shooting a guy and then have him call me a motherfucker.
What was this one? Was this M for mature? It seemed
yeah,
like
this is M for mature. Like, it tries to be gritty in, like, the worst ways possible.
Yep.
Yeah, they call you so many stupid names, but, like...
I think somebody, like, actually yells, get some. I think, like, Nate yells, get some, at a certain point.
Oh, and the best ones are coming up.
Yeah, and there's one segment where you're, like, swinging by statues of soldiers or bionic some people who helped win the war against the fake Nazis, and the military general guy gets in your ear and is like, do you see a statue for my troops, for the real troops, the people who really sacrificed, unlike you with your bionic arm? The people who deserve it. And he just treats you like garbage the whole time because you're better at fighting than his soldiers are. Man. There's one line that I just felt like I needed to read. I wrote it down because it was perfect. At one point, I think it's when Spencer is talking to Mag and trying to convince her that actually terrorism is bad and nukes and killing a bunch of people is bad. He says, by the way, that's people you're breathing.
Oh, yeah. Which, like, there's no, like, dust. Like, there's no cloud.
Oh, when he says it, I was just like, you can't, no. That's the best line that I've ever read in a game of the year.
Like, what was the point? What was he referring to?
That the vaporized civilians is what he meant,
yes.
but like, it was just so out of place with the whole sequence. They just had like a anime fight sequence for a bit, and then he says that, and he's trying to pull on the heartstrings, and she talks about her wheelchair because her speed legs were too good. So, can we get to the big twist?
Sure, please.
Wait, the one thing I want to say, though, is... Can we talk about the mole boss, though? Because there was...
Oh, yeah. There's a big
the
dick
game
snake.
Tries to pull a letter from the original NES game and having these boss fights, yet you can clearly tell they ran out of budget. There's one against a helicopter because, you know, this is the early 2000s where every boss was a helicopter at some point.
Yeah, the 50-cent memorial, kill a helicopter.
50-cent memorial of kill that helicopter with a bazooka. And there's only really one good boss battle, and that's against the mole hole. And it's the Mahole. Did you all die against the mole hole boss once and then got the secret line of dialogue when you try him the second time?
Yeah, I didn't know it was a secret line of dialogue.
What was the secret line?
You remember that era of video games where they knew that they designed a boss that was difficult and you would die more than once, and so they programmed different lines of dialogues when you attempted it more than once? I think the clearest example is the Grand Theft Auto series where You'll listen to a different kind of conversation as you drive to the location, which is a really bad way of dealing with just playtest your shit. So when you fight the Mahol a second time, it's wink, wink, nudge, nudge, as always. And, man, that boss battle has some of the most jingoistic music that plays as you try to fight it. It's like I feel like I need to salute my country and then just raise a bald eagle with my bare hands, and they're actual bare hands, while eating apple pie. But
it sounds like a Navy commercial.
Yeah. Spencer says, as the Mahol pops out of the ground, it's like, oh, it's
a giant snake dick-looking thing.
It is a dick-looking thing, and it shoots a laser beam from the tip of it. And so it's good old Mr. One-Eye, as we say, right? So he says, are you excited to see me, or is something like that? It's basically a boner joke. It's basically a boner joke. So he says something like,
nice.
Are you just stiff, or are you excited to see me? And then Super Joe says on the intercom, Nathan, you're just going to have to fuck it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought I thought I misheard it.
No, that's literally what he says.
Yeah, he just says it, and I'm like, oh.
Guess I'll
Great
have
point,
to.
Super Joe.
I guess I'll have to, let's
He's
go.
my commanding officer.
It's the best advice you've given all game, Super Joe.
But there's only 3 boss battles where you feel like you're in a high-stakes environment where you get to use your bionic arm abilities. And really only one of them is a good use of it, and that's the Mahol, because the boss battle against Groder is a teeming pile of crap.
They're all disturbingly horizontal, too. Like, for a game like this, there should be way more verticality than that.
Yes. You're on a leveled plane with no ability to go up or down because the buildings are covered in radiation.
Like, the only one that's good in that sense is the skyscraper moment, where you have to basically rocket launcher the helicopters.
Yeah.
Because at least then you're on scaffolding, and there's a sense of vertical movement to it.
Yeah, and there's one combat arena where you get locked in and they just send waves of enemies at you, and that feels pretty good, swinging around. There's a ceiling that you can kind of grapple around on, and there's 2 levels to kind of go up and down. But yeah, I agree. The Mahol, it's a cool fight because you have to use the grappling for throwing things, but there's only like 3 trees in the entire area. You're basically in a parking lot.
Yeah.
And so there's segments where you just need to like jump 3 times because it sends out shockwaves. And that's not what this game's about, really.
Yeah.
So one thing I just feel like we should call out before we get to the twist. You're trying to stop BioRain from acquiring the carry-on device to stop the Vulture?
Yes,
weapon?
carry-on is
Vulture project.
Dead stuff.
Project Vulture.
Yes.
So that's what they want. They want this object, and you get access to it, because if you get access to it, then they won't have it because you're the good guy.
Yep.
You know, you need to get the weapon before the bad guys get the weapon.
And you eventually find out who's funding BioRain is the evil Nazis from the previous game, which we should probably talk about why we keep saying not Nazis.
Go ahead.
For those that don't know, Bionic Commando was made in Japan, and Japan has a different attitude regarding World War II. So in the original version of Bionic Commando, the enemies straight up were Nazis, and the final boss was literally Hitler. You got to shoot Hitler in the face and cause him to explode into, like, gore and viscera.
It's really violent, actually.
It's a really violent scene for an NES game. You literally watch his face implode. And then when they tried to localize the game for the United States or anywhere outside of Japan, that shit don't fly. So they changed Adolf Hitler to Master D. And they changed all of the evil Nazis into generic fascists that just happened to be wearing gray and black. And their flags were red with the, Black Eagle from the Weimar Republic. And so I think the villain was Generalissimo Kill It. Literally Kill It as his name. And Nathan Rad Spencer has a brother. His name is Lad Spencer. And,
Damn it.
Generalissimo Kill It kills Lad Spencer, and then he has to get his revenge. And yeah, so this game had Nazis at some point, and they changed it because you don't do that.
Yeah, and you can also trademark the fake Nazis. You can't trademark Nazis. So,
they changed Hitler's name, but they didn't change the icon, so it's still Hitler who you're fighting.
He looks like Hitler.
Yeah.
It's a very recognizable face, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Very punchable face.
True.
Yeah, so this game, like, you get Project Vulture, you get the carry-on device, which you never see because why should you? And it turns out Super Joseph has been betraying you the whole time. He's been working with the terrorists because he was a Bionic Commando too.
No, say it isn't so, Gino.
Yeah. But he's just using them to get power and to betray the government. He wants to kill people. It's unclear. His motivations are very poorly defined, but he wants Project Vulture to take revenge?
I don't know. I don't know. It's when it's at this point when the game talks a lot, but none of it makes sense.
But we haven't mentioned it at all, but the reason Nathan Spencer came out of retirement to stop BioRain was because he wants to find out what happened to his wife.
Oh,
because
yeah.
when he came back from the war and he didn't know where his wife was. He's very sad about his wife, and he doesn't know where she is. And Super Joe says, "Hey, Natey boy, if you go and take out these terrorists, I will tell you what happened to your wife, because I know." And you get the device. It's like, finally, you're going to tell me about my wife. And he's like, psych, I'm going to take this weapon, and then I'm going to try and kill you. And then I'm going to sick this Nazi dude on you, and you kill him. And eventually, they tell you what happened to his wife basically in audio
a PowerPoint presentation, too.
Yeah, you hack like a turret or two, and it implies what happened. Who wants to explain it? Because I can't.
I'll do it.
Yeah, you want the honors? It's your game.
Sure. You go through this kind of corridor, you kill all these people, and Super Joe's all like, I want you to know it took like 3 generations to make the bionics work, and the problem is the technology never agreed with our organic bodies, so we needed something inside of it that was organic. And then as you
realize we had to stop making the machines like people. We had to start putting people into the machines.
That's a literal line of dialogue. And then once you reach the end of this corridor, the door opens, and there's just this PowerPoint where there's like an arrow that points to Nathan. It says Nathan, and then there's an arrow that points to his arm that says the name of his wife. And so you find out they took his wife and somehow transformed her into a metallic metal machine arm. So
they gooed her and put the goo in the arm or something.
They made the human, they turned her into juice and then put the juice into the arm. And so his wife is his arm.
Which, okay, this is patently ridiculous in every possible way, but I will stand up for it just slightly in the fact that it's a nice inversion of sort of the transhumanist dream of one day uploading your consciousness into the computer, where like we'll all live in cyberspace utopia one day. This is like, okay, you want to be part of the machine? We're going to make you part of the machine, but you don't get to escape your body. Your body's coming with you. We just need to make it goo first. So it's a nice little sort of like monkey paw wish fulfillment, but I don't think for a second that's what the game thought it was doing.
No, and I think what the game thought it was doing was, well, one, they fridge Nathan's wife. They kill her and make her the motivation. It's not cool. She says like 2 words in the whole game. She mostly exists to like run away in a cutscene.
A dream sequence or something that he's having?
Yes. It just replays like once or twice. She's barely a character. And I think they're trying to say in this moment, in explaining that Nathan's arm is his wife, that's why the Bionics need their Bionics so much, because it's their literal loved ones ground up into metal dust and then implanted onto them. So the only reason they feel whole when their arms and bits or legs or whatever are attached is because now they've got their loved one with them forever. That's what they try to narratively, that's what they're trying to say. But the problem is, I just said all those words, and they sound like madness.
Those sure
But
were
it's so
words
good.
you just said.
I always, especially when we play our stupid Final Fantasy games, I always like to run a simulation to where you have to remember a grown adult wrote this and told themselves, "Man, I am good at my job. Why am I not writing scripts for Hollywood? Why am I not writing the next Star Wars or Star Trek movie?" And it's just that shoot for the stars, but miss spectacularly quality to this game that just makes me love it so much.
You're saying my arm is my wife? Oh no.
They never explicitly say his wife is his arm, but come on now.
I mean, they explicitly say
imply
it. He
it.
just never realizes it.
He doesn't know that.
Again, one of the most controversial aspects of this game, at least in terms of people who legitimately liked Bionic Commando, is this game is a giant betrayal. Because, you have all these characters, and none of them are acting or behaving the way that they behaved and acted in the previous game. And tonally, this game is depressing. It's depressing to think that they took his wife and literally chopped her up into bits and turned her into juice. And while, yes, Bionic Commando is all about punching Nazis in the face, and again, that jingoism doesn't play in today, at some point you have to be the adult and say, you know what? Maybe we should just reboot a different franchise within Capcom rather than Bionic Commando.
I mean, man.
Maybe it's a time for just maybe another reboot that fails for Devil May Cry or Darkstalkers. Maybe we should do that instead of Bionic Commando.
But the tonal shift, it doesn't even pay off. It's
No.
not even good.
Oh, I think that, say what you will, but those last two levels of the game are kind of amazing. Like when you're controlling the helicopters and forcing them to crash into each other as you.
Oh yeah, that part's cool.
That part's cool. And then also when you're killing all of those robot vultures, which the game never explains what the fuck you're doing or what the fuck those are.
Pete, what's Project Vulture?
Oof. Okay. So
all you need to say is that this game goes full Evangelion at the last 10 minutes.
That's true. It seems to be like so they move, which is really the logical progression, from bionics to full automated robots. So Project Vulture seems to be a suit that gives you control over these pure robots, eliminating the need for cyborgs.
But I feel the part you're omitting from the army of robots is that they are literal mechanical vultures.
Yes.
Screaming vultures that look like angel things. Like I said, this game goes full Evangelion in the last 12 minutes.
But can we talk about the most important part of the ending? When Rad headbutts his way through a space helmet?
And kills Super Joe by headbutting him to death.
Something that's designed to protect a man. Flying, I'm assuming at supersonic speeds, in a giant robot vulture, and he just headbutts his way through it.
That entire level, say what you will about Bionic Commando, but that entire level is actually really well done. It's like...
Is it?
I think it's a really good level because you're moving from one vulture to the next, just ripping out their arms and shoving their wings into their mouths or ripping their chests open.
Yeah, but they're just QuickTime events. They're QuickTime events with a cool animation.
But it's so visually everything back in the day that was like a visual cutscene. It was either a cutscene or it was a QuickTime event, and
I saw Bayonetta.
It's visually cool to look at.
I've just seen Bayonetta rip up vulture-looking angel things.
We got 10 years until Bayonetta comes out. Come on, or 5 years.
Bayonetta come out?
Yeah,
and
5 years.
Yeah, 4 years from now we have Bayonetta.
No, it's one. Bayonetta came out in 2009.
What?
They came out the same year.
October 29th.
Okay, I retract my criticism. But nah, that entire final level is super cool. I love it. It's a schlocky mess. Let's talk about how you kill Groder. You rip off his fucking lower body of his part of his body, and then you take a fucking grenade, you shove it in his mouth, and you kick him down a scaffold, and he blows up as he falls to the ground.
Jesus
yeah, and
Christ.
he does say, come back from that.
Damn.
It's the most Michael Bay video game I've ever played.
It's almost like The Last Action Hero, but without the like tongue-in-cheek satire. Like you're looking at it, and you're like, all right, I think this is mocking like the action game tropes, but it's not. It's very much serious about it.
Mm-hmm. Instead, they listened to Disturbed for the maximum allotted amount of time and said, "What if that but a video game?"
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much.
The Bayonetta comparison just bums me out, man, because that game is also a throwback to like Sega's history. That game's Space Harrier for a while, and it does all of the things, all the tonal shifts that Bionic Commando is attempting. I feel like Bayonetta actually did.
Yeah.
So I guess we kind of have to come to, like, the conclusion of this video game is what it is, and you find out that there's this series of Morse code that plays after the credits, and it turns out that the Nazis were going to, the not Nazis were going to restart Project Albatross, which is a reference to the very first game, which is Hitler's coming back. And they would have done a very good job of using Hitler in a video game.
Very nuanced, I'm sure.
Very nuanced approach. But hey, Wolfenstein did a good job.
We need to make Hitler gritty so he's got dreadlocks?
Okay, sure. So they spent a decent amount of money on this game. It had a very troubled production cycle. And Em, you're a former video game maker. Let's say that you make a video game. In your head, what's a good number of copies sold for you?
If I made a video game, like 100 would be good.
100 would be good. Okay. So let's
you're
say
one
that
person.
you spent
if I'm
like
one person. If I spent a AAA budget,
millions of dollars, a AAA budget, yeah.
I would want to sell 500,000 copies at least.
So this game in its first month sold 27,000 copies.
Oh, no.
So 27,000 copies. And it had a very significant budget. Capcom had such a miserable time working with Grin that they, following this game, Kinji Inafune called the entire relationship he had with Grin messed up. And Capcom said, we are officially terminating all of our relationships with Western developers effective immediately.
Jeez.
And they completely pulled out of Western game development. They closed down their Western production studio, which it too, unfortunately, their game underperformed, which was Dark Void, which is also maybe something you all want to check out, because Dark Void actually has some interesting ideas. But Grin, so this game sold 27,000 copies. The game they released before this was Terminator Salvation, which was an adaptation of a fairly popular movie. It sold 43,000 copies. So Grin had one and then two flops in a row, and they were working on fumes. And part of the reason why this game didn't do well is because it was this kind of was one of those many moments that marked the death of the B game. I mean, a lot of people have thought about it, but like basically four things ultimately killed the B game. One, the development of the strong indie scene that we have today, which completely, redirected fans into significantly better games, but games that B developers would have been making with a larger budget, and so it cut into their underline. Two, the release of micro games such as Geometry Wars. Three, you had the high budget but kind of short single player with a strong, significant multiplayer. The third-person shooter genre exploded with Gears of War and Uncharted 2. And then four, this is the game that killed the whole appeal for a lot of these games, and that was multiplayer. And this was probably one of the most important games of the previous generation, but Call of Duty happened. Modern Warfare, as much as you want to talk about how these games have become incredibly irresponsibly designed, but probably the most important game of the previous generation was Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. And so this game actually had an online feature that was meant to maintain or congeal people to come to it and stay with their copies and not sell it to GameStop. And it didn't happen because they were all playing Call of Duty. And so this game is an emblem of that generation that doesn't exist anymore. That B game, and Grin was supposed to make a Square Enix game, or they were supposed to make a Final Fantasy game, but the story there is just so weird. Apparently, they were approached by Square. They were like, hey, we're interested in you making a Final Fantasy game that's set in the Final Fantasy 12 universe. And they're like, absolutely, let's do it. And they're like, what the fuck is Final Fantasy? And like their owner of their studio had to look up on Wikipedia what Final Fantasy 12 was. And when Square Enix realized that they didn't know what the fuck they were doing, they pulled out immediately. And then Grin lost their last lifeline, and the entire studio died.
That speaks so highly of Square Enix that they would approach a studio that knew nothing about their product, had no track record of making anything JRPG related, and took multiple steps into the relationship before they realized that the person they approached had no clue what they were doing. That explains so much.
What would they have made?
They were going to make a sequel to Final Fantasy 12 that was set in a different part of the Ivalice that was suddenly revealed to everyone else that was Norse-themed, which makes absolutely no sense because the whole point of Ivalice and Final Fantasy Tactics is it's kind of like that not Lawrence of Arabia, but Tales of Arabian Nights. So having this part of the environment that's suddenly Norse, because it's a Swedish developer. That was the form of legends and fables that they were familiar with, but it doesn't make sense for Ivalice to have these Norse gods and like these Vikings in the environment. And oddly enough, Square Enix was totally open to them making it right up until they said, we want to make something with Vikings. Like, apparently that was
a complete lack of understanding.
It wasn't the lack of understanding. It wasn't the fact that they had no track record of making an RPG. It was the fact that they wanted it to make the game about Vikings.
Which is extra great because Final Fantasy 13 apparently involves some
form
in
of
that
Viking
direction.
stuff. So yeah, this game basically killed the developer. It was but remember,
and
Gino,
the publisher for a while.
Yeah, and Capcom pulled out of making non-fighting games.
Could you imagine making a game that bombed so badly that a publisher said multiple continents can no longer make games for us?
That's incredibly impressive. Honestly, you have to really mess up to like they just said no more North American, like everything.
Or European. They
Sorry,
had
we don't.
a European studio at the time.
South America,
insane.
go fuck yourself. North America, go to hell.
Let me see if I can find the quote. But yeah, they pulled out of the entire market. Here it is. Our experience with Bionic Commando has demonstrated the difficulty of outsourcing the development of new titles to overseas companies, and we will not be doing this ever again. So yeah, they pulled out. And then from this point forward, Capcom as a company has been a shadow of its former self. They've made some good fighting games and some bad fighting games. But it's also worth mentioning that Spencer as a character was supposed to die in this game, and then they brought him back. Didn't they, Gino? They brought him back in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And
is that canonical?
No, it is canonical. Nathan Rad Spencer is back, and the best part is the canonical version of Nathan Rad Spencer right now is Dreadlock Nathan Rad Spencer and not Buzzcut Nathan Rad Spencer.
He was good in that game, too. He was very good in that game.
Mm-hmm.
You could grapple people. He was awesome.
Yeah, in a fighting game, that's a big deal.
He was used in tournament play. But man, has anyone tried to play the multiplayer? Did anyone try it?
There's a multiplayer?
Yes, there is a multiplayer. It's a 4 versus 4 arena fighter. And the servers are completely dead. No one is playing it.
Can we be the people?
Like no. Just
people.
stop and think about that. Remember when like multiplayers for games only had like 4 versus 4, and now we live in this PUBG Fortnite era where everything needs like 100 people?
Yeah.
Yeah. What a weird thing.
When we're done recording this podcast, I want to see if I can connect to this. If I can host a game. We can get 8 players. This game's multiplayer will support 8 players.
It's a weird thing.
Deathmatch, capture the flag, team deathmatch, all the things you want. with your zip-lining swinging game. Oh, man. Throwing and kiting are absent in multiplayer. What?
What?
I'm looking it up
that are
too.
fun.
Those are the only things that are fun. I guess it uses the. I'm looking at Jeff Gersman's review, and it sounds like it was also not very balanced because
Weird.
just ran around and shot using the rocket launcher, which has an auto target feature, which seems kind of messed up
Still?
for multiplayer.
In multiplayer, it still does? That seems like an oversight. I can't believe that they would make such a mistake in this very well-considered game.
Seems like there are a lot of oversights to this game.
Man,
Which again, back in the day during the B game, that's how you made a game. Is the single player was maybe 5 to 10 hours, and then you plopped in this copy pasted multiplayer mode, and that's how you justified a full price game. When games jumped from $50 to $60, the B game wasn't able to adapt to that because why should I play your game when I'm still playing Call of Duty, and it's been a year since the previous Call of Duty?
Yeah. If you wanted your game to live forever, you just made a multiplayer that was constantly in flux. So
And these games were not able to do that. You can't make DLC for this game. Do you want to know, or unless you want the untold story of Nathan Rad Spencer working with Lieutenant Magdalene?
Oh yes, please. That's we're gonna revive this this franchise one more time.
I'll be honest with you. I would almost want to see this. I want to see someone have another go at this Apple because, and I don't know if I want it to be so deliberately bad like Metal Wolf Chaos, or if I want them to just make a Bionic Commando game kind of like Rearmed. Because Bionic Commando Rearmed 2 is a bummer.
Bionic Commando Rearmed is great.
But Bionic Commando Rearmed is just like a 2.5D suit applied to the NES game.
Yeah, it was great. I enjoyed that game. I played that before I ever played Bionic Commando 2009. Rearmed is a totally adequate game. It's totally good. You should play that. But man, this game it shows moments of brilliance and then just the tone, the writing, the clearly rushed nature of the game, it just does not come together. But damn if it doesn't try a lot of things.
It tries a lot.
So I think that will probably call an end to our discussion of Bionic Commando, which makes me kind of want to play John Woo Presents Stranglehold.
Oh, man.
At some point.
That killed an entire studio.
I don't know what that is.
It's the video game sequel to the movie Hard Boiled, starring Chow Yun-Fat. It's so you basically it's slow motion diving across tables and gun kata.
Remember the slow motion stuff from Max Payne?
Oh,
in this game you activate tequila time by sliding on tables.
That's a solid pick.
And diving backwards and diving sideways. You only activate bullet time when you're diving.
Oh.
You have to be diving and sliding.
Sure.
And it has like a combo meter where if you slide across tables or slide across things and you slide across the same object too many times, your score goes down. We'll get to that eventually. But it's now your turn to pick again, Em.
Oh, I get to pick?
You get to pick.
Oh man, I didn't have anything prepared. I gotta decide right now. Hold on. Let me open my Steam thing.
So Pete, what you need to understand is Tequila Time is because the star of the game is Detective Tequila.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I just assumed it was some sort of racist point, but no, it's actually
no. He drinks tequila.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better then.
That's why it's his nickname.
Hard Boiled is also a very good movie.
Oh, I know what I want to play.
Okay.
I want to play Gris.
That's good.
Yeah.
I was going to pick Gris at some point. Solid pick.
Oh. Okay.
No, excellent.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
GRIS?
Yep.
GRIS, yeah.
It looks very cool. Good pick. We all like it.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out in December of 2018, which means it'll probably qualify as a 2019 game because December games, they never get a fair shake.
No, they don't.
So we will play our first 2019 game. So excellent. Thank you, Pete.
Always a pleasure, guys. Good game. Well, not good game. Interesting
come
game.
on.
Excited for next week.
Thank you, M.
Thank you. It's a
And
weird
thank
one.
you, ZP.
Hook me up and feed me with trash. That's how I feel about video games.
Great words to live by. And thank you, listeners. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. That's the easiest way to reach us. Till next time, peace!